Welcome to a Pub Natter special. We were lucky enough to be invited to record this episode in the Castle Cottage Cafe, which is situated inside Oakham Castle in Rutland. We are hosted by Leigh Burrows, the manager, and our special guest is Alicia Kearns, Member of Parliament for Rutland and Stamford. We primarily discuss the government's recent English devolution white paper, which will result in a restructuring of the local councils, which will hugely affect Rutland. Alicia lays out her plan to save Rutland's ceremonial county status and what you can do to help. When rain stops play, it's time for some Pub Natter. We're in the Castle Cottage Cafe in Oakham, Rutland, and the cafe is actually situated inside the castle, which is fantastic. And we're with Leigh Burrows.
That's me.
Who is the manager,
Cool.
and Justin, of course.
Hello, good afternoon, as opposed to good evening.
We've got some amazing coffee and a cheese scone that I'm pursuing, which is absolutely delicious.
And I'm working my way through a piece of Victoria sponge, which is also very,
it
very
looks
good.
really good. So first of all, Leigh, really important question. What's your favourite drink?
To be honest, wine.
Any particular that you like?
Oh, I do love an Argentinian Malbec.
Nice. You like them powerful, strong?
I do, yeah. Maybe in the summer something lighter. Maybe like a nice blush rosé.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice summer evening. Other than that, coffee. Good coffee.
Yeah, can't beat a good coffee. This is a really nice coffee. Second question. Favourite pub grub? Or even think high-end pub as well.
Oh, okay.
What would be your number one go-to meal?
What would it be, my number one go-to meal? You can't beat a good steak, but emphasis on good.
Yeah, steaks are popular, aren't they?
I bet that's one of your popular ones, isn't it?
So,
You're only the second person we've asked. It's
Yeah.
a new feature.
Oh, okay. Did they both say steak?
One did, actually, yeah.
so how do you have it done?
I have medium rare. I quite like it on the rare side of life. Nice peppercorn sauce, thrice cooked chips,
Oh,
side of tender stem broccoli.
nice.
Are
Yeah.
there any pubs that do a good steak? Because a lot of pub steak can be quite average.
It's my dad's birthday on Sunday, so I'm taking him on Monday to go to... Have you heard of the Six Bells at Witham?
No?
Oh, well, that's outside Rutland, you see.
I know,
So
but
Justin
it's
gets a nosebleed if he
fantastic.
goes outside of Rutland.
Oh, yeah. I also like Hitchin's Barn.
Yeah.
That's certainly in Rutland and
Yes.
certainly delicious.
Yes.
I haven't tried their steak, though. I'm not sure if they do steak.
Yeah.
Where's Wickham? I know
Witham.
but it's
Witham.
way-
It's Stamford Way.
Oh, Witham.
Witham.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Wickham.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, that's
one of the Withams
very
is in
fun.
Rutland, and
Is
the other
it?
one isn't.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's interesting. Learned something.
I don't know which is which, but one of them's in Rutland and the other one isn't.
So, Leigh, tell us about yourself.
So,
So where were you originally from?
from Uppingham.
Oh, you're a
And
local.
I am, and then I moved over here, which was a struggle because it's really far away.
Yeah.
Do people
and-
still talk to you back there, or
No, they don't. No. Once I moved out, never spoke to again. We were done. And then I moved here. I've actually been with Castle Cottage, so it was set up by someone many moons ago. We were in a different location around the corner. Then she sold it to another lady. So I worked for the original one, the second one, and then Steve bought the business in 2015, and he took me on. So I'm just part of the furniture at this point, really.
What were you doing before your catering days?
I went straight from school to Stamford College, where I learned catering. So
Oh, right. Yeah.
many years ago now.
so it's your whole career?
It is, yeah, it is.
And did you want to do that as a kid? Was it something you just grew up wanting to do?
I had a certain penchant for cooking. My dad used to do it. My mum's a really good cook too. So it just sort of naturally followed on. And I thought, well, people are always going to want to eat. So why not?
Can't fail.
It's quite
Exactly.
unusual to meet someone that's actually ended up doing the thing that they wanted to do as a kid. Most of us, I certainly just ended up doing something because I fell into it and found I was quite good at it.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever grew up wanting to.
No, I wanted to be a footballer for Luton Town.
How did that go?
Not very good.
You've probably got half a chance now.
Yeah. Well, I'm turning up on Saturday, so I might get a game.
Take your boots, just in case.
Oh dear, funny. So, fantastic. So, what's the best bit for you?
I like making people happy. Like your reaction to the scone and the cake. That's a lovely thing. You can't beat that. The alternative to that is when you don't make them happy, and that can be quite a struggle. But we don't have too much of that here, so we're quite lucky.
I'll be very surprised. People must be pretty fussy if they don't like this.
We have all sorts.
Yeah.
So, all of the produce is homemade?
Yeah, so we have like a local baker. She has her own catering business, but she bakes all of our sponges and then we decorate them in-house. All of our scones are made in-house, and then we try and keep it local. Like being in Rutland and supporting the local economy is really important to us. So we go to Nelson's the Butchers for our meats and things like that, and go to the market for our produce. So we try and keep it as local as we can.
Cool. So the last time I came in here, this wasn't here.
No.
So how did this all happen?
So basically, the lady. So we were behind the All Saints Church many moons ago, and she turned it into an Airbnb. So my boss Steve, he had to find an alternative, and we were looking at lots of options. And then he approached the council about hiring this place and turning this into a cafe, because before it was sort of like a children's sensory type area where they could play and things. And yeah, we found a niche and we fitted in really well. It works amazingly with the castle and the weddings and the events through there. We're their exclusive on-site caterer. So from that perspective, it works really nicely.
It's really good. And was this part of the castle, or is it a more recent add-on, do you know?
I think it's a more recent add-on, but way before. This used to be courtroom number 1. Yeah, and for the castle to remain with its castle status, they have to host a court proceedings here every 2 years, which we do all the catering for, and then we get to sit in and watch the cases. So that's really interesting too.
Oh wow, yeah. So what sort of, can you remember stuff that you've heard here?
I can.
Without giving any names away, obviously.
Yeah, so there was a couple of cases. One of them, she was sneaking drugs into her boyfriend who was in prison in a sock. She'd immersed it in the sock, and they caught her. Nothing happened because they couldn't get the weight of whatever she was taking. So yeah, it's really interesting. I haven't seen anyone go to prison as yet, but maybe next time.
Well, we talked a lot of episodes ago when we were in the George about how people would be taken from here and off to the jail, and thereafter, if they were particularly bad, across to the Swooning Bridge, left this mortal coil.
Yeah, God, it's scary, isn't it?
And you'd be able to sit outside the George in the market square watching them take their last walk.
Absolutely terrifying. Not for me, that I don't think. I don't like horror films or anything like that.
So tell us about, you said that you do host events in here.
Yeah. We love hosting events. It's really nice that people entrust us to host their special day, whether that's like a wedding or a birthday party or like a wake, just being part of people's lives in that sense. And we get to know people quite well. We'll have several meetings with them before their event, and it's lovely. A lot of people from the local community support us, which is really nice. A lot of regular customers, and then we have groups here, so people come in, whether they're like support groups and things like that. So it's really lovely.
So we've been joined by our local Member of Parliament, Alicia Kearns, Member of Parliament for Rutland and Stamford.
Lovely to be back with you again.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again.
So Leigh, please meet Alicia.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And
Justin's going to tell us a little bit about the history of the castle.
Yeah, well, the main reason we've asked Alicia to join us again is to talk to us about the proposed changes to local government and how they affect Rutland. But before we do that, I just thought I'd have a little chat about Rutland and some of the history that we potentially might lose, or at least not have anything to attribute it to. So Oakham Castle, where we're sitting, is not the traditional King Arthur type structure that you normally conjure up in your imagination. It's like most things in Rutland, including yours truly. It's very small but perfectly formed.
Multum and Parvo.
Absolutely. And so the building we're sitting in is about 850 years old, and really hasn't changed very much in that time. They've moved a door, put a few pillars up here and there, but fundamentally this is pretty much the same building that was put up in about 1180.
Wow.
Although one very welcome addition is the cafe that we're sitting in.
Who does amazing scones? Have I mentioned that?
You have mentioned the scones,
Once
but
or
you should
twice.
mention them again. I've not eaten the scones, but
Sugar-free.
they look very good. And they're scones, not scones.
Good man, I'm with you on that. I'm also a
Me.
cream no jam girl.
the
very
way
strongly.
to remember is that when you've eaten it, it's gone.
I like that.
You're from the south.
It's one of the few clean jokes I know.
And we'll leave the jokes at that point and move back to history of Rutland.
So anyway, Rutland has existed on record in some form since at least 1002, when the area was granted to Emma, who was the mother of Edward the Confessor. So it gives you some idea of how far back we're going. It's in the Domesday Book. It's likely that there was a Moat and Bailey castle here as early as 1075, and the Great Hall that we're sitting in was built about 100 years later by somebody called Walken de Ferrers, who was the lord of the manor at the time. The unique feature of Oakham Castle, which most people will know about, is a collection of ceremonial horseshoes. And the tradition is that any noble who passes through Rutland is required to present a horseshoe to the lord of the manor. And nobody knows for sure when the custom began, but we know that it goes back at least to 1470, because that's the oldest one we've got, which was left here by Edward IV. We had, Edward VIII since, haven't we? So that's quite a long time ago. It's huge. It's about 5 feet tall. I can walk under it without ducking. And it's very ornately decorated. It's likely that the custom started before this. One reason I think that is that why else would the king turn up with a 5-foot engraved horseshoe if he didn't think that somebody was expecting it?
Making up for something? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't imagine he had like a big bag of them in the back of his...
They hang them all upside down as well. I always thought it was bad luck.
That's
No, I'll
important.
come to that.
That's important
Is
for
it?
Rutland. Yeah.
It's
I'll
the
come
right
to
way
that.
round.
Exactly.
Did you know, Lee?
Yeah, just so the devil can't sit in it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course.
He says, of course, if it's the most
Yes.
natural thing in the world. But that is why,
It
yeah.
is, yeah.
So nobody knows for sure when it started, but it's likely that it started, or the most common theory, which was shared by Jeremy, who is the curator, I guess, of the hall. So if you ever come to the hall, speak to Jeremy, because he knows lots more about this than I'm about to impart. They think that the origin of the horseshoe comes from Walken de Ferrers. De Ferrers comes from the French for farrier. Farriers made horseshoes. The de Ferrers family crest has a horseshoe on it, and since in those days, if you were in charge of Rutland, pretty much everyone did what you said. So the horseshoe, we think, became the symbol of Rutland as a consequence of that. We've now got over 240 horseshoes, and the most recent one was given to us by the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, which is Edward and Sophie,
It is.
I think, just under a year ago. And they continue to accumulate. We haven't got one from King Charles yet.
No, we don't.
I think we have one. We have one from the late Princess Diana. We definitely have one from Princess Diana. I don't know whether we ever had one from the Prince of Wales when that was his title.
I don't think so.
I'm not sure.
No, I don't think so.
So, if he's listening, he owes us one. There is another thing about the horseshoes. We've just talked about why they're hung upside down. One is, as Lee said, so the devil can't build his nest. The other is that apparently we're more generous in Rutland, and we hang them upside down so the luck falls out onto anybody that happens to pass beneath them, rather than
that's
having it
quite
the other
nice.
way up and keeping
Yeah.
it for themselves.
Well, so that's very sweet. I hadn't heard that one.
That's a better way of thinking about it, I think.
No, the devil builds his nest is definitely there as well, but
Interesting.
yeah,
That's
so-
very sweet.
Yeah. So, sorry. The other thing about other than the horseshoes, which Lee touched on earlier, is that this building is the longest running seat of justice in England, and the court first started here in 1229. and has continued, obviously kind of ceremonially now, but every 2 years we have the court. And I remember the first one that we had here when Rutland regained its status in 1997. And there was the Lord Mayor and lots of people wearing. It was like the House of Lords were on a day out, and it was all very grand. So it's a ceremonial thing. But 800 years in 4 years' time, this place where we're sitting has been a court. And the reason this is important is that all of this history and lots of other history in the area is unique to Rutland. Nobody else does this. Nobody else does the horseshoe thing. The nobles haven't spent the best part of 800 years dropping off ceremonial ornate horseshoes as a tribute to East Leicestershire or East Midlands Oblast or whatever it is they're going to call it next.
Oblast.
So they're a tribute to the town of Oakham and the county of Rutland. And if you make the county of Rutland disappear, then it kind of loses its meaning. So the locals feel very strongly that whatever happens with reorganisation, retaining Rutland as a ceremonial county, retaining its identity is important, and it will cost nothing, or next to nothing. I mean, you might have to pay the salaries of the Lord High Sheriff or something, but it's buttons compared to most spending. And if the solution is one that meets the government requirements, but they insist on eradicating Rutland from the map, that would suggest that it's ideological rather than practical. And hopefully they can be persuaded that Rutland as an identity, as an entity, is worth retaining. Which leads us neatly on to asking Alicia to just outline what the plans are and what it means for Rutland and
first of all,
what we're going to do about it.
First of all, could you just kind of outline the thinking of the current government and why we're at where we're at?
So I'll do my best, because the more you spend time, more time you spend on this, the more radicalised you become against it. So essentially, the government's argument, they were very clear in their manifesto, they wanted to bring in mayoralties, and that's because they want to devolve powers and money from central government and give more power to local people, which is something I think most of us would say, yes, please. Not many people want Parliament having all power and all funds. But then what they didn't tell us in the manifesto was that as a result, they also wanted to do local government reform underneath it. Because essentially, look, if you're government and you only have to deal with 15 mayors or 10 mayors, that's much easier than dealing with, however many county councils you've got, let alone who then have district councils and so on and so on. The point of their argument on local government reform was that they believe that there are many councils around the country who are failing, either because they're just failing or because they're too small. Now, the problem with that is that the main reasons they said they're failing is adult social care and special educational needs. But when you look at Rutland, despite being the smallest county in the country, county council, we are the best rated in the entire country from the last review that was done, which I think was 2021.
Can I just jump in there?
Please.
But we recently closed down our only primary school that was special needs.
Yeah.
So that seems to
adult
contradict.
social care is what we were deemed to be the best in the country, not special educational needs. So special educational needs is a journey that Rutland County Council has been on for a while to significantly improve. And yes, there are a lot of frustrations about the closure of the school, because if you project where we're going as a country, there's many reasons to think that we are going to be able to full capacity that school in the future. But that's a decision the council made. So essentially, in terms of adult social care, though, which is the biggest cost for councils around the country, despite the fact that we have a far more weighted older population than, for example, many areas as well, we are the number one council in the country. Despite being a small council, we are in the top 5 for highways in the country. So we kind of break that model that suggests that smaller can't be better and deliver more high quality services. But that's their argument, is essentially you can make cost savings, you can have more effective councils, you can help councils who struggle because they're small to deal with the big costs of things, and that's how you make everything better. But as I said, it's difficult when you come to the cost saving argument as well, because if you're just scrapping Rutland and small districts and then imposing a mayoralty, you're just moving the cost to a different place within essentially the cost structure. So that's the argument they're making, and unfortunately it's happened at real speed. So I think that's the other thing that's really shocked people. So before Christmas, council's got a letter saying you've got till the 10th of January over Christmas to tell us how you're going to reorganise and to tell us if you want to be fast-tracked, which is bonkers, and obviously left us very little time for consultation. My frustration is that Leicester City, Leicestershire County Council and Rutland County Council, who are all three different parties, Lib Dem, Conservative and Labour, wrote to government on the 10th of January and said, we all agree we need reorganisation, we all want a mayor, we're unanimous in it, and we'd like to be fast-tracked. And obviously when I saw that letter, I went, whoa, 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 whoa.
What's the motivation for Rutland to fall in line so?
So I think, look, the government has been very clear. They've said, if you don't get on board, we will do it to you. And we will legislate if we need to force you to lose your independence and to join a bigger council. However, my perspective is, if you have a Goliath doing that to you, you don't just run and hide in a little cave and say, OK, whatever you need, we'll do it. You front up and you say, we are not happy about this. It doesn't work for us. Your arguments do not have weight when it comes here. However, if you are going to do it to us, here are our expectations, here are our red lines, and we're not going to take it lying down. And that's my kind of biggest conflict with the council at the moment, is that that's the approach we should be taking, because Rutland, from all my conversations with MPs across the country of all different parties, we are the county with the most to lose, because no one else is proposing to have their identity completely lost. And as a county, our communities have very different views about whether they want one big unitary for the whole of Leicestershire and Rutland. Not many people want that, but some do. Whether we want two unitaries across Leicestershire and Rutland joins one of them. Whether we want to fight to remain as Rutland and just say, boo-hoo government, we're not going to do this. Or whether we want to join with Lincolnshire and become, something else altogether. And so the frustration is the speed, but also the fact that I think we should be very cleared that we are being forced to do this against our will, and therefore we have some expectations.
So enter Alicia Kearns, red rag to a bull.
I know, I'm really sorry. Yeah, it's just difficult because when you feel so strongly about your community, it's very difficult to just ignore it. And that's why I held these two public meetings, because MPs are probably the most neutral party in all of this, because even if Rutland stopped being Rutland, I would still represent this geographical area. My job isn't at cost or not, like it is for councillors. And people just had no idea that this was happening. So I said, look, I think I need to hold these two public meetings. Well, it was meant to be one, but obviously it sold out within 24 hours. And I went, right, we'll do a second. And I probably could have done 3 or 4.
Wow.
But for health reasons, my husband was
We're
like,
not blessed with huge venues here in Rutland.
No, we're not. Yeah, so essentially, and we held the public meetings, and people feel so passionate about it, and rightly so, not least because it's happened before, and they feel flabbergasted it's happening again, but because we are unique and we are different, and you saw that in the pandemic in terms of the way our communities responded, but just the way we live our lives, and we are unique and different. And if you said to a Scot all of a sudden, we're going to absorb you into England, good luck to you, I mean, you
The
would
outrage.
see...
Most Scots think that happened about 300 years ago.
Well, yes. But you'd see Braveheart Mark II. I mean, it would be extraordinary. Yeah. So the idea that we as Rutlanders should somehow behave differently and say, yeah, that's fine, you can just make us, into other yellow bellies or make us part of Leicestershire. Identity matters.
Do Lincoln people mind being called yellow bellies?
Not in my experience, but it's not too fair. It's not the most common phrase I ever use.
I only know it because a friend of mine's from Lincoln and he refers to himself as a yellow belly.
Oh, there we go.
Wow. So, the plan. So I've got written down here in front of me, I have your 6 tests to protect Rutland. The first one is ceremonial county protected.
So essentially the plan changes on a daily basis, and I've literally just come off a phone call with all the district councils for Leicestershire and Rutland County Council. It looks like in March, when proposals go forward to government, you'll have one from Leicestershire County Council saying they want one giant donut for the whole of Leicestershire, but not with Rutland included. I think that's a politically savvy move because they know that the government would try and force us to join it, but then they're not the ones proposing it. There'll be a proposal from the districts in the Rutland, which will be to split Leicestershire in half, either north-south or east-west. And then there is still the possibility for a third proposal, which is some kind of East Midlands rural authority that is like South Perceivon, South Holland, Melton and Rutland coming together. So what I've said is, if we are going ahead with this, and if Rutland has got to rejoin Leicestershire as in terms of its county council, not as identity, there are 6 things that have to be, in my view, upheld. And there's no reason for Rutland County Council not to go into those negotiations with the districts, but also with the government saying these are red lines. And the ceremonial status is the kind of, without question, it's not, I don't think anyone could disagree with it. at every public meeting, everyone said, we are Rutlanders and we will remain as such. So I've launched a petition, and essentially the week after the proposals go in, my plan is to present it to Parliament, because essentially it means that I have a period of time in the House of Commons where everyone has to hear that Rutland is refusing to lose its identity, and B, the government has to respond. And these days, getting wet signatures on a petition is really hard.
Not easy.
No, so I'm hoping we can do that.
I've actually got a copy of the petition in front of me.
Good man.
Shall I read out what people will be signing for?
Yes, although just for aware, obviously it had to be signed off by Parliament, the wording, so people will have to forgive that it's not the most plain speaking you've ever heard for a petition.
The petition of residents of the United Kingdom declares that the government proposals for local government reorganisation and devolution risk the status of Rutland as a ceremonial county, and further declares that the earliest record of a Lord Lieutenant in Rutland is 1559, and that regardless of the outcome of local government reorganisation, the petitioners urge the government to ensure that the protection of Rutland's ceremonial county status, with the continual of Lord Lieutenants and High Sheriffs to serve as the monarch's representative in Rutland exclusively, this is one sentence, thereby protecting the identity and the pride of our communities in our home.
Exactly.
And so if you want to sign this petition, you have to go onto Alicia's website, which is aliciakearns.com. You will see it. And you have to download it and sign a hard copy, and then what do they have to do with it?
Either post it or drop it back to my office.
Yep.
Or one thing's, pubs are really struggling at the moment, so are a lot of our cafes and shops and everything else, all the additional costs that are coming onto them. So we partner with pubs, because the idea is go in, spend some money, buy a pint, buy some food, support a local pub, and sign the petition while we're there. So we've got loads and loads of pubs across the community doing it. We've also now got lots of cafes, loads of shops, so just keep your eye out for the petition, please sign it. And I think it's incredibly uncontroversial. It's essentially, it's not about council tax, it's not about where your councillors work or how many you've got. It's just, should we be called the County of Rutland, yes or no? And I haven't met anyone so far who says we shouldn't be. So hopefully lots of people will sign.
Yeah, and ultimately we'll end up being part of an authority called Rutland and something, or something and Rutland.
Well, I've said Rutland has to be in the name of the final county, of the final council, so yes, but yeah.
And how do you return the petitions once they're signed? Is there an address or...?
Pop it through my office door, 6
Which is
Market
in...
Square, so Market Square of Oakham, so really easy. Really, really easy. Or post it if that's easier.
Okay.
By the 21st of March, yes.
So why the 21st of March?
So the 21st of March is the date on which councils locally will send in their submissions to government saying this is how we want to reorganise if you're going to do this to us. And so my thought is that that's when the government starts working through those proposals and seeing which one works. So we need from the earliest stage be saying, you will protect Rutland. If we wait until November when they decide the final proposals, my risk is that we've missed those periods of months where they're doing the work. And look, separately, obviously, I've written to Angela Rayner as Deputy Prime Minister, and I've said, please, please, please. I've said, look, our phrase is multum in parvo. We are asking for very little, but it would mean so very much to us. So please do that. And obviously, I'll keep pushing the government. But so far, every response I've received from the government is, oh, we don't want this to impact on ceremonial counties, but if it does, we'll have a look at it. No. I want a solid written commitment and a clear legal framework for doing it, because this is the problem. And the council hadn't looked at this. I saw an email from the council this week where they went, do you know that we're not legally protected as a council? And I went, yes, I've been telling you this since December. I've been telling you we're not protected as a county, and so it has to be part of our formal stuff that we put into government. Protect our county.
Is there a kind of an ideal number of signatures on a petition?
100,000? No. So essentially, when I presented the Mallard Pass petition, I think I had about 3,400 signatures, and Parliament thought it was the biggest petition they've ever received in person. Wow. So my goal is that we're a population of, 42,000 people. I would love if we could get to 20,000, because I think that would I've got to carry them around Parliament, and people were mocking me with the Mallard Pass one because I almost dropped them all. But we have to show we're really serious about this. But yes, so look, we're probably not going to get to my 20,000, but wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a real demonstration that Rutland is serious about this?
I'm pretty sure everybody would sign it. For me, it just seems such a lengthy procedure to have to go to sign a petition. Why can't we do this digitally?
So essentially, these days, it's very easy to sign a petition. Petitions get to 100,000 signatures very quickly, and then it gets to have a debate in Parliament. So essentially, what Parliament decided, I think hundreds of years ago, was that if you wanted to formally petition the government through your MP, it had to be a hard signature with proof of address to show that these are real people and to show that you really mean it. And because otherwise, as an MP, it's really fascinating. We get emails to my inbox every day where people don't even realise they've been sent on their behalf by campaigning organisations. So if you signed a petition years ago, or if you just happened to the mailing list, and then I'll respond to constituents saying, thank you for raising this concern, and they go, oh, I didn't even know that had been sent on my behalf.
Wow.
And this is the problem with electronic comms, whereas a hard, wet signature, there's no question there that someone really means it.
Okay.
Right. Is there any benefit to be had by trying to get one of these electronic petitions that you hear about from time to time, where you get the 100,000 signatures, or are those debates theatric but not particularly beneficial?
They very rarely shift the dial, if we're honest with ourselves. So, yes, you get an hour's debate in Parliament, so that would be wonderful. But it would probably just be me that would speak in that hour's debate. And look, I can speak about Rutland for an hour. That's not a challenge. And look, maybe that is something we should be doing as well. It's a good challenge to me to have a think about. But the main thing for me is forcing this. But we probably should have a look at the bigger one as well. And anyone in the country can sign the petition as well. So if you've got family in Scotland or anywhere else, tell them to sign.
Oh, really?
Is that change.org that you have to...
You can do it any online, but I think change.org is a particularly common one.
And anybody can just hop on there and...
Absolutely.
Yeah, anybody can start.
And that one shouldn't be in my name because obviously it's about the public bringing one, whereas with a formal petition in Parliament, it has to be presented by the MP on behalf of community. Can I ask, actually, are people talking about it in the cafe? Like, do you hear people talking about this, or is it...
I've been bringing it up to people, and obviously this podcast has really helped because I've been talking about it a lot more and talking about the fact that we're doing this. Is it too late for us to have one with the signatures?
You can have as many pages as you like. You can have a poster.
Fantastic.
You can have whatever you like.
Yeah.
So there's actually giant banners arriving next week because so many people have written to me saying, I want one from the front of my door, or I want so on, so on. So no, until as long as they're with me, kind of on the 21st of March,
fabulous.
You can keep asking for printouts every day.
Yeah, fantastic.
Build them.
If you wouldn't mind, I think most of our customers are local people, and I think they'd really appreciate this, and I think they'd be definitely up for signing it. So that would be great. Thank you.
So where can people get? I've just been shown a Save Rutland window sticker, I guess, or where can people get hold of those?
So drop by my office, and we'll keep giving them out as long as we've got them. The pubs have got their own black version that's slightly more funky and alternative. Yeah. And then, if not, make your own. Shove them up. Put them up.
Right. And apart from signing the petition, is there anything else that people can do?
So that's the main ask in terms of current priority. But Rutland County Council has just launched a survey on their website. I'm not particularly happy about it because it's 2 questions and that's it. But please go onto Rutland County Council website and give them your views and tell them what you prioritise. I think the first question is what matters most to you about local councils, and the second is just an open text box. I have been reassured again by leaders today that there will be meaningful engagement after March 21st. And then at some point, there is a dispute about whether or not government will ever formally consult on this. I don't think government will. I think they will consult on mayoralties, but they won't consult on local government reform. So it's really important that while Rutland County Council has the survey open, go and have your say, and then follow it, because Rutland County Council put out a press notice saying this is happening and no one realises. So it's really important that people feedback.
Okay. Last week we were at the Fox in North Lothian, chatting with Jason Allen, who's the chair of Discover Rutland. Yeah. And he was painting a really important picture as far as tourism is concerned. And we would lose a lot if we lost that name. And that's not something I'd kind of ever considered, how important that is. So, because it's probably the most important. Tourism in Rutland is huge, isn't it?
Tourism is enormously important. So essentially we've got education, because we've got a lot of independent schools, we've got agriculture, we've got tourism. But if we lost our tourism, the amount of our businesses who would fold, it's a bit like when the Burley Horse Show didn't go ahead. That brings £4 million into Rutland's economy in just one weekend. Wow. And so 1 year it was cancelled. I worked so hard to try and prevent it and if you imagine that whole scale. So Rutland, it really matters that we protect our name in terms of economic future, as well as all the other things that matter in our hearts.
Yeah, so East Leicestershire isn't really a tourist hub, is it?
No, it's not quite catchy, is it?
And you have to keep reminding people. They need to keep seeing that name, don't they? Because it's like, they're trying to think, where can I go for like a day out or
But I think
weekend or
there
something?
is a sense when a football club is about to go bust, they get 10,000 people for the first time in 50 years.
Yeah.
When a pub's about to go out of business, the locals all are up in arms about it. And when Rutland disappeared in the 1970s, apart from people in Rutland who were very strong, passionate about it, it was only the likes of the Ruttles and Rutland Weekend Television that brought it to the attention of the rest of the country that this place used to exist. And, it took 25 years to get it back time.
I wonder if we can learn anything from that.
I think there's probably a lot to learn. So I think in 1974, the difference now, I think, is a lot of communities feel like, of our community feels that there's no point fighting. They're like, it's going to happen to us. So when I did polls at the end, just hand raising at the end of both of my events, and I said, look, who wants us to move into a 2-district model? Almost everyone put their hands up. And then when I said, essentially, if those who would like us to fight to keep Rutland County Council as a council, independent council, only about a third of people put their hands up. But when I said of the 2/3 of you who didn't vote to protect our independent county council, is it because you think there's no point, we've lost already? Almost everyone put their hands up. And so I thought that was really interesting that people have just gone, do you know what, it's not worth the fight, we're not going to win. Whereas in 74, from everything I've read, people were like, no, man the barricades, build the wall, this is, we're going to protect Rutland. And so it is really important that we have that community buy-in and that community fight, and that it's clear that it's coming from the community. That's why I've been so fiercely apolitical in my public events that I've held and everything I'm trying to do around this, and hence why launching it with the pubs rather than just me, because it's about trying to say, look, I'm your representative, but I'd like to think that when I work locally, I try to be really apolitical. Yes, nationally, I'm elected to be a Conservative politician, but we need that whole community response. And, I'm like, do we need schools doing letter writing campaigns with their students? What do we need to do? Whereas in 74, they were, it ends up everywhere. I found clips from like newspapers in Kenya and Zimbabwe and America talking about this tiny county. The Telegraph has said to me that this year, without what we're doing, they had 10 letters a day for something like 3 weeks from Rutlanders saying, you will not take this away from us, or people from around the country saying they can't take away Rutland's independence, Rutland is so special. And I thought it was lovely that I only know that newspaper's response, but that people from around the country and Rutlanders were writing in saying, don't do this to us. So it has to be all of us. No one person can fight this on their own, and they shouldn't be.
Would Rutland Water would that still be Rutland Water, or is that a
I don't think they'd rebrand. No, I know what you mean though, but I don't think they'd rebrand it.
No.
Because it's
The Gulf of Rutland.
The Gulf of Rutland. I'd much prefer Rutland Water.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So,
East Leicestershire Liquid Resource Unit.
what about, people going to lose jobs?
At the council.
They're going to go, whatever happens, it's pretty much sure that they're going.
Well, based on the fact that Rutland County Council wrote a letter on the 10th of January saying we want reorganisation, we want a mayor, and we want to be fast-tracked, yes. Government, if I now go to government as the MP and say, no, we want to stay independent and we don't want to lose our council, they're going to say, well, that's not what your county council leader said. And I think, look, people have come to that realisation, and people are really pragmatic locally. But yes, so all those people will technically lose their jobs when the council's existing.
Can you just make people unemployed like that? Surely that's illegal.
There'll be some, on the call we just had with district leaders, that was one of the topics we discussed, is how do you support all those staff? Because the councils are major employers in every single community.
Yeah.
But obviously, a lot of those jobs will still need to exist just within a new council body.
Troop it over, won't they, to the new...
So we'll have to see what happens. It's just too early to say. But I do worry about staff morale between now and 2028, when this is meant to be finalised. What does it mean for all of them? And how are they going to feel? And how do we make sure our county is still providing the best service possible until that point?
I was just trying to work out 28. Are the current government still going to be in then? Yeah, they will.
Yeah. Well, no, obviously they could get re-elected, but as in terms of an election.
Yeah.
But this is one of the points I made really early on, is that if we really wanted to fight against this, we should be as difficult as we can to essentially buy time in the hope that maybe we wouldn't have to. And because lots of people have been saying, but the Conservative government's going to do this to us as well. We were talking about mayoralties, which I've hated. I've always said that mayoralties don't work in rural areas because the money goes to the urbans and we all get forgotten. But what our government said was that you don't need to do the local government reform underneath as long as you agree to a mayor over the top. And so although I wasn't happy with mayoralties, and which is why I think partly the Leicestershire, Leicester, Rutland mayoralty never moved forward, despite quite a lot of people locally asking for it in terms of councillors. We said you can keep all the rest of it as it is, and so yeah.
I mean, I think the strategic approach that you seem to advocate is if you sit there and say we're little Rutlanders and nothing's going to change, we're on the barricades, we'll just get trampled on, and you probably struggle to get very wide public sympathy for that point of view either. But I think if you say we've given you everything you want, we've got the right number of people in this proposed organisation, we've met all of your requirements, we just want to keep our name.
Yeah.
That's a much harder thing to say no to.
It is.
And
Although,
I think
as I have added my 5 others. So things like council tax equalisation. Because there are people, if you walk up and down Oakham High Street and Uppingham High Street, I did a market stall 2 weeks ago, and people were like, oh, but I want my council tax to come down. I went, oh, trust me, so do I. But at the moment, there is no certainty that if we merge with a bit of Leicestershire, that our council tax would come down. And actually, if you look at the history of council tax, that's not how it's worked for Rutland. So I've said, for example, if we merge, one of our requirements of Leicestershire districts, because they're getting a lot from having Rutland join them, it's not like, oh no, we've got to have Rutland, it's going to be an economic weight on us. Anyone should be lucky to have Rutland. I've said we want council tax equalisation. I've said if government money comes from government for, I don't know, potholes or building new schools, there should be a kind of equation, Rutland consequential, so that we get our fair share, because we're giving up more than anyone else is giving up. Smaller council wards, because at the moment, if we were to merge as is, if we went into one big giant unitary, there'd be 3 councillors representing Rutland in a county of over 100 councillors, when currently we have 27. So in terms of that kind of democratic deficit, even if we go into 2 Leicestershire kind of unitaries plus the city, you're still only looking at 6 councillors, maybe 9 if you're lucky. So I've said I want smaller council wards, because also democracy has to stay local to people. And for anyone who is not a Conservative, Labour or Lib Dem voter, you want that, because what all the evidence shows is that the further local government moves away from local communities, the less independents get elected, and you always end up with just the big parties, because people go, well, I don't know that person because they live 20 villages away. And the final one is about obviously Rutland having its name in the council, because our identity matters, and that's part of it.
Cool. Do you feel like a Rutlander? Have you got the identity now, do you think?
So I definitely feel I do. But my mum's entire family comes from Rutland, which I never talked about when I stood for election, because if you didn't grow up in Rutland, I think it's a bit cheeky to be like, oh, but my mum did. Or all my mum's family did. So I grew up in Cambridge, obviously just next door. But yeah, it's weird. I go to cemeteries and my mum's family name is there, not because it's like a well-known, wealthy landlord, or so on, but just because there were so many of them. But it is, my husband, 4 months before I was selected as the candidate for Rutland and Melton, we came on holiday here, and my husband was like, this is the dream. This is where I want us to raise our family. And I was like, dream on. Alan Duncan is going to die in Parliament. I've got no chance of ever becoming the MP. And then miracles happen. So my family are overjoyed. My husband couldn't be happier. And yeah, it feels like where I was always meant to be. So
that's good.
Because you from Rutland originally?
Yeah, I grew up in Uppingham, and then I moved over here when I was about 18.
Over here.
I moved over here to Oakham. We were talking about that earlier. They said, do people still talk to you from Uppingham? I said, no, they don't. No. Quite the rivalry.
But do you sometimes see that? I had someone knock on my door the other day, and I was talking about something I'd done in the East, and they're like, I don't care about that bit of Rutland. And I was like, wait, we are one county. Let's, if we can't be with 42,000 people, then... But we're one county.
But you can circumnavigate Rutland on foot in 2 days. It's not that big.
No.
So
but perfectly formed. But
final sell to keep Rutland. What would you say?
I feel the pressure of getting it right now. Okay. I'll give one, and then you can give one.
Okay.
All right. Who we are matters. Our identity matters. And Rutland shouldn't just be in our hearts. It is who we are, and it is not asking a lot for the government to make sure that we remain Rutlanders, not just in our hearts, but also on paper. We are Rutland, we are a county, and that's what we should be.
That's really well said.
Oh, bless you.
Because we...
Make it better.
I think there's more than being a transaction, isn't it? It's more than a business at the end of the day. And I think that's how the government are looking at it. And yeah, you're right about it's in people's hearts, isn't it? It's what you kind of consider yourself to be. So you're taking away identity. aren't you?
Which is fundamental to a human being's ability to construct who they are and how they live their lives.
Well, when I moved up here, it was January '97, so everybody knew that Rutland was coming back, but it hadn't actually happened. I think it happened on the 1st of April or something that year. And I remember what it meant to people. I mean, I was an outsider at the time, and it didn't really mean that much to me. I just joked about it the same as everybody else did, Rutland Weekend Television and all the rest of it. But I remember being really struck by how much it meant to people. And I've loved being a Rutlander. Ever since it's become Rutland again, I've lived here. Whenever people ask me where you come from, I always say a place called Oakham in Rutland, and they look at you blank. It's kind of 20 miles east of Leicester. And they go, oh, yeah, I remember.
Most people think it's up north somewhere when I tell people.
Well, it is compared to where I come from.
Yeah, London-centric people.
Well, I did question time a few nights ago because I've lost my mind. And when they introduced me, first they got the constituency wrong and said Rutland and Melton. But then when they corrected it, it's the final version that went out, unless they edited it, is Rutland and Stamford in Leicestershire. And I'm like, oh no! But
that's like saying Wales, England, isn't it?
Well, this thing, they had to re-record the instruction 4 times because they kept getting either my name wrong or something like that. But I was like, oh no, the final version, particularly with all this happening, to say Rutland and Stamford in Leicestershire, I was like, oh no. So Fiona Bruce has begged her team to cut out the in Leicestershire bit. So I hope they managed it before it went out. But
I'll be watching it
it's
now.
the last thing that we needed.
So I reckon we should give the last word to somebody that's born and bred in Rutland, lived here all her life.
I'm extremely proud to be from Rutland. There is literally much in little, and the people here are lovely, and you have a rapport from them. You see Bob up the road, and that's really nice. And local business is so dependent on Rutland and the people that come here and tourism, and I think it's super important to retain it for that basis. And we should be proud. It's a beautiful area, and I just don't want to get lost in Leicestershire.
What a perfect way to finish.
Excellent, yeah.
Thank you, Alicia, for your time. Thank you, Leigh, for
Thank
your time. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for listening. You do not have to live in Rutland to sign the petition. You just have to be in England. Thank you in advance for your support. We've put links on our webpage at timothyives.com/Pub Natter to the government white paper and Alicia's website, where you will find further information and be able to download a hard copy of the petition. For our next episode, we are back to normal. We are hosted by Lammy inside the vaults in Uppingham, and our special guest is Tim Sexton, the Senior Species Recording Officer of the Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust. We do not make any money from these podcasts and present them purely to promote Rutland's watering holes and give a voice to local folk. You, yes, that's you, can help us by leaving a review on your preferred podcast platform. We prefer Apple, as that is where we have most listeners, but are happy to receive any reviews on any podcast platform. Reviews help us to increase our audience, which helps to promote Rutland. The theme music is by Tom Arnold. That was a Pub Natter broadcast.